recording. All right.
All right. No, I have a lot to say about Joe Bolton, the party, man. Speaking of stalkers, speaking of guys not taking cues, it's a story all about that. About
which one is this?
The party.
The party. Okay, the party. Because I thought we were looking at Hard Country.
We hadn't finished talking about Hard Country.
Yeah.
Oh shit, we're talking about that too.
Hard Country is long, but we didn't really get to. I felt we didn't flesh it out enough. That there's some. That's like a story in itself.
Well, we could talk about Hard Country all fucking day, man.
Well, it's up to you. Just wanted to.
No, let's start there. Let's talk about it. One of John's favorite poems. John's favorite Joe Bolton poem, and probably, honestly, mine too. Definitely, the one that sticks out in my memory is something that gave a first impression and made me want to read more of Joe Bolton. Definitely, I had to go buy the book, and the book is fairly expensive for a poetry book. It's like $27, which at the time,
$27, yeah. So I still remember how much it was, because usually we'd be buying books for like when they were 99 cents on Amazon or a penny or whatever, and you'd pay $4 in shipping. $27 is a lot.
When you're driving strippers around all day, that's like a whole day's fucking pay sometimes.
Right.
But it was worth it, man. And even as, like, I don't know, I feel like there was so much I didn't appreciate at that age, especially when it came to poetry. But even as dumb as I was, like, we immediately recognized, based on that poem, the value of Joe Bolton and the value that he was going to have, as somebody we revered. Because we all went and got his fucking book, and we all just kept talking about him, how he was almost like an idiot savant. Like, imagine being 27 and telling a story of a place by its seasons. Only from 3 different images, or let's say 4 different images. Spring never really comes in. He moves the turn is talking about the seasons to talking about water, which maybe that is spring. I don't know. Maybe there's some argument to be made that his feelings about water were his feelings about spring, and his feelings about, drowning and death. Springtime is,
Well, it's organic, man. It's not neat. It's not perfect and neat, He didn't he wasn't like, I gotta have that spring stands in there. He's like, nah, I want to kill myself. I'm writing about that.
Well, it's probably because he was just writing. He was just writing, and these are the images that came to him. I don't know if he ever approached the poem like, I'm gonna do this. If he felt like changing the subject, he just changed it. Fuck it.
Hey, was the anthology called Hard?
No, it's called The Last Nostalgia.
Okay. I thought for some reason I was like that would have been a good Hard Country, be a good name for an anthology.
It would. Yeah, it definitely would be a great name for this book too.
For this book, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the name alone sold me on the book. I mean, shit, I was full of nostalgia back then.
We all were.
We all were. But, yeah. It's an interesting poem because, like, he especially compared to Party, where his youth and kind of an experience shows a little bit in that one. He's kind of the way he depicts the alcoholism, the guy, the young kid drinking a bottle of Jack Daniels, yeah, I'm gonna go grab myself another drink, it's cool or something. That's a good poem. I don't mean to shit on the poem, but this poem has the voice of a fucking 55-year-old or something in it. Yeah. And you said it perfectly, Craig. He's telling a story through seasons, which is just what the fuck? Where did you get this, Joe? It's kind of crazy. Considering his age and everything, but this is just, to me, this is always one of those poems that that transcended his just who he was really as a person. I mean, it's obviously very personal too, but I don't know. I feel like sometimes we write a poem outside of your body, and he was definitely like outside of his body and just writing just a perfect poem. Like there's nothing I would consider changing in this poem. It's just we've talked about it like in terms of story, decisions you make and plot and like what happens in the story. Line by line, this one's making the right move. I mean, it's a good question though. Like how is it like it's perfect because he wrote it and he was being honest with it, honest and sincere and writing without any artifice, while also doing it well and masterfully, like with language. So it's an interesting question, like what makes a poem like for me, this is I guess would be the question, like what makes a poem perfect. I'm not quite sure. I guess I'm putting that together right now, but it's just a fucking awesome poem, man.
It's cool that you said that it didn't seem like a young person wrote this, because that's the exact way I felt. I always felt it was like someone from the silent era wrote this, like from the Depression era, and I don't know. He just we were talking about what Tom Jones, right, Craig?
Yeah,
and it's almost like
John does that.
he didn't. Yeah, he wasn't in the war. He was discharged, but he wrote like he was in the war, which is like, so I don't know. Like sometimes, it's like you're tapping into some old part of your, some past life or something. I don't mean to be so new age, but it seems like an old man who wrote this. It's beautiful.
Well, think about how much like what you read influences your voice.
Yeah,
So
I'm sure. Yeah, that's
like,
true.
I'm curious. That would be an awesome question to ask. Like, what the hell were you reading when you wrote this? But
I felt it was cool also because he was always going back. Like it was like the harshness of environment and the harshness of people. It was like back and forth. Like it was like, I mean, it's so much an environment in here, but you're getting like a snapshot of people's personalities or lack of personality. This the coldness of his parents, and just the coldness of people, and not coldness from being mean. It's just coldness. It's like
unfeeling almost.
It's unfeeling. Yeah, it's like this ignorance to feeling. Like it's people like who wouldn't even if they had the money, they have too much toxic masculinity to even go to a psychologist.
There's not a lot of characterization, but he's definitely talking about like his country, like where he's from. I'm guessing he's just about like somewhere in Kentucky, and that kind of person you're describing.
Yeah, like
especially back then, like in the 80s and even before that.
Like they're not. No one's. Everybody's gonna handle it rough. They're gonna just like stomach their mental health.
Yeah, I see that a lot here. I mean, I guess you see it everywhere. But
yeah, but it's just cool. He doesn't really go into it. It's just more situational. Like this, people just kind of caring. Like a horrible thing happens, and then people just kind of carry on with themselves. Like just go on with your day. And you're like, wow, that was heavy. Just to live that moment and then do something else, like nothing happened.
It reminds me of two things. It reminds me of the statement in one of Harry Cruz's novels, Feast of Snakes, where he's talking about how his dad would walk the dogs to kill their fathers, and it's like he didn't do it out of cruelty, and he just did it because he never conceived of any other way of things being. It would never occur to him to look at what he was doing, like dog fighting, as being cruel. It was just the way things had always been and always would be. It's like it reminds me of another statement by another Harry Cruz book too, the Knockout Artist, where he's writing to his kids writing to his parents who are living in Mississippi, and he's in New Orleans, and he's like, yeah, they serve these square donuts over here called beignets, and he spells it out and he writes down how it's pronounced, and his father writes him back, and he's like, I ain't got no use for no word like that.
Yeah.
They don't sound like they are kind of people over there. It's like
I love that. I really do. It's like you have so many people that's trying to, level up with someone intellectually, but there's also there's a humbleness of saying like this beyond my years or it's beyond my learning. Like
Right.
someone is accepting like this is beyond our learning. We should stick to our people. And it's almost like you'd rather have someone like that than some pompous person who
Right.
thinks he's I say he because he's usually a man. Someone who thinks he's smarter than they actually are, or knows more. That's just nice dealing with someone who's just country and that's it. Not trying to be anything else. But that's great.
Yeah.
It's
John, how do you feel about some of these nested stories in here? I mean, if for a guy like who's into fiction, it was a good poem to start out on.
Yeah. It's
With the calf, or was it with was it calf, or was it?
First, it starts with summer, and then it goes to the calf in winter.
Yeah, that's what it was.
I always think about like what's going through the poet's head when they write like this, because a lot of times when I sit down and write a poem, I'm just focusing on like one scene. And like the turn for me would be like coming out of that either into another scene that like reflects on the scene that I rendered or was thinking about, or like coming into the present moment. And this is more complicated than that because he's jumping around. He's still kind of moving forward. Like it's framed in the present moment. So it is kind of that too. But I think it's cool. I think it's fucking hard to do, right? It's really, you don't expect that out of a poem usually. Plenty of poems do it, but even other Joel Bolton poems don't really do this very often. Like compared to Party, which is that kind of like straight one scene, trying to get meaning out of that one scene. This is like, I'm going to frame this poem as an ode or like a reflection on where I'm from or this place I'm at right now. And he kind of uses that to let himself go wild and go wherever he wants. And I think that's a cool way to think about writing in general. It kind of reminds me of Craig when he kind of broke through, because he was when we first started out, when we were first learning to write, Craig like everybody else just writes straight up scene, or hopefully straight up scene, simple scene. There's this one story, I forget what it was called. Craig, you probably remember, but it was kind of like that, but then he would just jump around to like the distant past and then jump into the present and then back in the past in a different moment. But I think I don't know. That's just, and you just allow yourself to do that. Like he would allow himself to do that, and that's what Bolton's doing. It could go off the rails though if you writing like that, right? Because it could have no like spine or like anything holding it together, And I think the framework here is hard. Like literally in the title in that first line, it is even now a hard country to live in. Like kind of keeping it all together. And yeah, there's like that one scene that's like super prominent that Dan, you keep going back to, that one with the calf.
Yeah.
Because it's like such a stark, it allows for that kind of what's it called? Kind of like
reflection.
no, like it has like a variance in like feeling and tone and
The barometer of the
the word's escaping me right now, but
I always
but yeah,
think,
like it lets it go all over the place, basically within that framework.
Like I don't know, like I always think like if Bolton's writing this poem and he doesn't, like he's in his mind, he's already living through that scene with the calf. But if he's not including it in there, then like it's like he knows about it, but the reader doesn't.
Like
And
dishonest too.
It's not. Yeah, it's like
mindset.
Is it really like what if you want to? If there's something to describe this hard country, what would it be? It has to be. If I leave this out, then I'm writing this with that in mind, but the reader can't know what I'm thinking.
Do y'all ever like read a poem, especially by like a student or something, and you're like, man, something is missing here. There's something you're not telling me. I hate that fucking feeling.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it doesn't mean it has to be so like confession, like super confessional. But it's like something that just gives it lets you know
That's
the culture was, it lets you know what kind of depraved, issues we're talking about here. Like if I meet
it's
Craig,
focused. It's
yeah,
obviously focused. Like if he was being true, like stream of consciousness, it would just be James Joyce. Like you probably even if it was really stream of conscious, like think about it, dude. Like your mind is going all over the place. I'm having a
yeah,
million like weird little thoughts entering and leaving my head constantly. So obviously
yeah,
there's like it's focused and it's art. Like that's where the art comes in, is like focusing it down and bringing to the surface the things that are the most important to the feeling. And I think that's why he has that framework of hard country. You know,
yeah.
I'm keeping it super like general and vague because I don't think he's really trying to do anything.
No, no.
He's really just like keeping it together, the poem together, with that idea of like what describing the country and everything. So I
It's
didn't
just
mean to
something
derail you
like
too much.
no. It's like if Craig writes a story and he doesn't include some of his, I feel like most pivotal past moments of his life. Like I just don't. I understand him more because of those moments, and sometimes I feel like you have to have that in a story because he knows that past. He knows that that situation, but the reader doesn't. So he may be riding with that sitting on him, but it's like unless you say it, it's hard to for the reader to say, "Oh, okay, that's why he has that experience, this very unique background."
And that's where the art comes in, the
Yeah,
balance between like
yeah,
what's going to make this story and poem what information from me is going to make this better versus complete self-indulgence and like writing your therapist, your life story or whatever.
yeah. If you don't want to, if it gets too memoirish, then it gets boring. But there's something in there to let the reader to put to it's very subversive, where like something's crazy and you have to make it seem normal within the poem, and the reader's like, oh, okay, wow, how did I get here? I kind of understand it now. Changes everything.
Yeah.
So I got this. I have this theory about writing that I call it the reverse iceberg theory. I teach it to my students, and I show them Hemingway's theory and my theory combined. So mine kind of takes up where his leaves off, right? So Hemingway's theory was if you were going to write about something pure and real and effective, then only a fraction of it would ever end up on the page. And the rest of it would be buried in your subconscious. And you could never deliver that to the reader because it would take your whole life, to recount your whole life. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
I can tell you it'll take me a week to write a story about my brother, and it'll take you 10 minutes to read it. But it took me 18 years or 24 years or 30 years of living with my brother to write that scene. You know what I mean? And that's Hemingway's theory. Hemingway's theory is you can never get your whole lived experience on the page. You'd only get fractions of memories and imagination. And that was the best you could do as an author. But it's good enough because it's effective, right? So my theory is that anything that was written that has meaning to the world, even though it was a small thing, it would always have larger implications about humanity and about life, right?
About
So,
your life too, right? Like you
well, your
can't.
life, but all life. So Joe Bolton's writing about himself and his family, but the things that he says are true of a lot of us. All of us here have parents who, in spite of their relative brilliance, were probably really dumb about really basic things. Like human emotions and caring about one another. And people like my dad and John's dad, just about like being respectful to your wife and treating her like she's the love of your life and all this stuff. just treating people with decency, and it's statements about stuff like that. And I also like it becomes relatable. If the thing you've written is pure, it becomes relatable to you. And so that's the second part of the theory is how so Hemingway's about how what somebody wrote ends up on the page, and my theory is about how what's written on the page is effective to the reader, because even though the reader didn't live a life, my life is nothing like Hemingway's. Hemingway is dead long before I was ever born, but I still read it, and it's still effective, and it's still affecting, even though I'm from a different part of the world and a different time and a different part of the country with totally different parents. His father was a doctor, mine was a strip club guy and a painter, but it's still, his writing is still captivating. It still makes me reevaluate my own life. You see what I'm saying?
Interesting what you're like to think about it. It kind of seems it's two ways of saying a similar thing. Like, because like if you're writing like the way I know you like to write, which is like in scene, in moment, like that character is a reflection of their entire past, their entire history, their society, everything. It's all right there, personified. And if you're writing well, you should be able to capture that. And I think a lot of characters, like in fiction, do capture that, and that's what makes it fucking awesome, because you can see it there, even though it's not being, it's not a list of crap like he's been through and what the society was like at the time. It's just it's what's right there on the surface, like showing its face, like putting up the mirror, of his whole life, of their whole life. So yeah, it's kind of a cool way of thinking about it.
Anyways, how it relates to Joe Bolton is something I think about a lot. So I write these moments that are like that haunt me about my brother. Like he woke us up in the middle of the night, and he's waving this butcher's knife around. He's talking about how he's going to kill this friend of his who just beat his ass. And he's talking about how this kid's going to like slash all of our tires, and we all he wants me to go outside and help him, fight this kid. I'm like, dude, I'm not fighting some fucking kid. What the fuck are you talking about? He's going to slash my tires? All right, I'll just move the car. Fuck him.
When was this? Like, how old are you? How many years before
I'm
you
like,
died?
this is the night that I went over. No, this is the night I went over to your house. I think I went over to Caitlin's, but
okay.
I'm about that age. I'm like 26, 25. And I wrote that, and I'm thinking like, man, this has significance to me, but like whatever it's supposed to do for the reader, I don't know if it's there or not, and I think part of that is this thing that you call reflection, John. It's like the second half of that poem where Joe Bolton's talking about the water, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of where it becomes
You call it exposition or whatever you want, but
yeah, but it's not exposition. It's like directly reflecting, like it's thoughts based off of the scene and images,
Yeah. I mean, he just talks,
and it's not obvious what it is. Like, it obviously isn't obvious what he's talking about. But like, where does it start, Craig? It's kind of more towards the end, like the last third of it, and why for 200 years anybody has bothered. A hard country to live in. Yes, he's reflecting on the title. That's the title is even now a hard country to live in. A hard country to live in. Yes, right. So that's that framework he's bringing back to kind of end the poem. But then he has that line that kind of like tells you what he's really like been thinking about, that he's unearthed through all this fucking artful scene, narrative, whatever you want to call it, but not a hard country in which to find a place to drown oneself. Yeah, I mean, keep going, Craig. I feel like I was derailing you a little bit there.
Well, that's the turn in the poem is a hard country, yes, but not a hard country in which to find a place to drown oneself. You think now of the rivers. He gets into the naming of rivers, and he's talking about water, and the loneliness of water. So Joe Bolton had this great way of talking about things without ever really talking about them. He doesn't say anywhere in this poem that he's lonely as fuck, and all of his memories are torturous, and all he can remember is pain, because that's the way his brain works. So that's the way human brain works. Something me and John talk about a lot is, can human beings even remember happiness? Is happiness only something remembered, not something actually felt? And why is it you remember the bad things in life so much more vividly than the good things?
Jesus fucking
And
Christ.
the torturous nature of being alive, but my kids hear my fiance. Sir.
Alpha and I said hi.
We had a fourth member here.
Hang on.
What's up, Finn? Can you see us?
What's
What's up, man? What's going on, homie? Hey, what's up, man?
I see you, John. I think.
Oh, sorry, that wasn't for you. He's used to it.
Move.
Got the dog, man. All right. Yeah, it does.
Where we eat it?
10 minutes, baby. Can you wait?
Yeah.
All right.
I almost.
If we got 10 minutes, we better hop on these last couple poems real quick. Yeah, I'm gonna grab a beer.
They'll eat, and we'll be fine. I'm good.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, yeah, it's just life is.
Just what I want to say. What are you and John doing?
We're just talking, buddy.
We're talking about poetry.
Yeah. Talking about poetry.
You're making another story again.
Yeah. Can you shut the door, buddy? Thank you.
Okay.
Please.
I can't wait till you get some interruptions, John. You're gonna have a little girl pulling on your computer screen.
That's part of the fun of fatherhood, man.
Oh yeah, man. I'm like looking for mine. Where the hell did she go? She's not. I hope she's not in Congress Avenue walking around.
How old is your kid, Dan?
9.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, about 2 years old.
John, I was saying that. Don't worry, man. Just in time, you'll have that little rascal pulling on the camera.
Yep.
Being like, fuck Wu-Tang.
Yeah, she's like, fuck your podcast. Feed me.
Exactly, dude. I was telling Craig it might actually be this weekend. Definitely going to be within this week.
Let me tell you, man. I was surprised that it hasn't been already. That's what
I know, it's been fucking forever, man.
You guys are. Yeah.
Knock on wood.
I can't wait to see those pictures.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Anyways,
it's gonna be crazy. I'm super anxious about it.
Yeah.
Joe Bolton never writes about what's really going on in his heart. He never like he has this very Hemingway approach where I'm not going to tell the reader anything. I'm just going to show them everything and let them figure it out. So he shows these scenes. He walks you through the seasons in Kentucky. And then he finally starts talking to you, but he still doesn't just directly tell you what's going on in his mind. Rather, he talks in this really meditative way about water, of all things. So I really think that in a way,
ominous.
The poem is about
ominous is a good word for it.
It's a meditation on stoicism. I don't think that Joe Bolton would have called it that, but I think that's what it is. A lot of times when you're writing, I don't know if you ever grasp the meaning of what you're writing. I don't know if you should or you shouldn't, but it's a meditation on stoicism. And I think part of the other tragedy of life is no matter how far you exceed past your parents and past the places where you're born, they still touch you and change you irrevocably. That stoicism was still in Joe all the way up to the end. Look at the name of the title of the book, The Last Nostalgia. I'm tired of being nostalgic. Nostalgia is another emotion that I don't want to show to the world and I don't want to feel anymore. Now, I think that his parents and his friends probably had a lot of feelings about the wrongness of the decision he made. But I definitely think that a lot of the problems in life, this poem exemplifies this problem, is that we don't talk about things, especially men. And why? Because we all look like that guy, or we think we'll look like that guy in the party, right?
What do you mean, like just blurting too much information?
No, I think that guy whining,
Victoria!
screaming, this isn't a relationship, this is a marriage,
Yeah.
Just we think we're gonna be viewed as that shameful, and I think that's also what the party is about. It's not to jump the gun from one to the other, but because I love the party a lot, even though there's a lot of, like John said, there's a lot of amateurishness. There's more so in the party, definitely more so in the party than in a hard country. A lot of amateurish lines, he's talking about heat seeps through me like heroin through an addict's veins. Or no, the music throbs through me like heroin through an addict's veins. It's kind of like this over the top, dirty Harry voice that Joe kind of affects sometimes. I still love the poem. I kind of love that line, even though, to me it just rings like really, really amateurish, and really like the people. One of my problems with people who write about drugs is nobody really writes about them well unless they've been an addict. The way that non-addicts write about drug addiction always feels forced, and always focuses on like these images of like syringes and spoons. Yeah, and just the popping, and snorted rails, like it was a line of track of snow on the ground. They just kept disappearing. Like you read James Crumley, and you're like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to be writing about drugs. Or you read Hunter S. Thompson, or you read the other big guy, the guy who wrote Chunky, William S. Burroughs. And you're like, oh shit. Well, these guys were junkies, and that's why they were able to write about it so poetically. Right. And Joe Bolton just clearly wasn't, but whatever.
And so few are writers, and so few survive long enough to become really good writers.
Or you could be smart and then seeing it from like dealing with a drug addict.
Yeah,
which is like James Baldwin, like having this other perspective, which I think is a lot safer, and could would involve.
Well, it's a lot more vulnerable.
That's definitely something I've had to learn, like writing poems about my brother, because I did a lot of needles, a lot of spoons and shit.
Yeah, but how many of those did you see? In reality, like
exactly, you don't really see it because the addict hides it.
Yeah,
but you imagine it.
You imagine it, but it's like, I don't know. Like Dan said, it was safer. I don't know if it's safer. I think it's more vulnerable to write about not knowing.
It's more
what that world is like. And
no, I meant like it's more authentic to write from like if you're dealing with an addict, like how and if some of that behavior is hidden from you, you're just being honest. Like I wouldn't try to write what's behind it, door number one. But it's like you still those feelings of maybe like disconnect and confusion and like dealing with someone's mood swings and this that I think that's something that an individual could write at length and do it very honestly and do it very well.
And so in this poem, like it's not even he's writing about an addict really. He's just using it as like a metaphor, which is like undercutting the whole like seriousness of like shooting, like somebody shooting heroin and what that means. And it's kind of like, it's not like, it's not really about that. It's a metaphor somewhat out of place. He's obviously like trying to reflect the kind of dingy surrounding situation and dingy people downstairs and like the fucked up
but you
relationship.
see how much more amateurish that sentiment alone is why not write about what you're actually looking at or what's actually going on.
Well, he does do that too, so he like saves it. I think he does, like, it's still good because he saves it,
right,
and like keeps what's in front of him, right? And he gets to kind of like the heart of it, I guess, which is this relationship, and kind of juxtaposing it a little bit to his own. But he's also not really trying to make too much meaning out of it. It's kind of like, I'm gonna like write a poem where I just look out the window, like it's as simple as that.
The only reflection that he gives in the poem is, I don't know what any of this matters or what any of this means. All I know is that tomorrow we're all going to go out hungover, So it's an exercise in a study of deriving meaning and deriving story out of what's going on with strangers outside of your window.
Yeah.
And it's fun for that, like, not every poem is supposed to be Hard Country or The Green Diamonds of Summer. You don't have to write the dead roommate poem every time, John. And, Dan, you don't have to write I'm Finally New York.
Yeah.
You could just derive meaning out of the weird shit going on, on the front lawn.
Getting your mail.
Writing and reading is supposed to be fun. And it's fun to watch this guy as he watches what's going on outside of his house, and it's fun to think about the lives of other people, and why they make the decisions that they make, and it's especially when it like is a moment of tragedy that happens outside. This guy loses his wife for reasons unknowns to us, and suffers it alone by just drinking and watching her as she does God knows what in that party downstairs. And it's also a statement about like, well, what could the narrator have done, to alleviate, to help this situation. The only thing I can think that he could have done is he could have gone over and, told the guy, hey, let's go get a drink together, or hey, let's get out of here. But I don't know if, as far as like going downstairs and like chivalrously, like, trying to bring her back or whatever, like, forget that. That's just, like, that's an impossibility.
The poem is kind of silly too. Like, he's definitely not going to do that. I glance at you and arc my eyebrows to suggest one last sweaty quickie.
Yeah, he just wants to get laid again. Fuck him.
He's just goofing around, dude. Just watching TV. Basically.
But that's honest too, because it's like the truth is what's going on, while tragic to the guy who's enduring it, is comical to the rest of us. And and that's just the truth. That's just the truth. It's definitely comical to the narrator. It's comical to me, the reader. And I don't know. I enjoy the poem just for that. I enjoy the poem just for. He's doing the same thing that he's doing with Tropical Courtyard. He's just he's just painting a picture of what's going on outside of his window. That's it. That's art.
Do you like his versatility? Is something that you enjoy?
I love it. Yeah, I love his versatility. I love that he's able to write a meditative poem. He's able to write a lyrical poem like Tropical Courtyard. He's able to tell stories. He's able to tell different kinds of stories about different kinds of people. He's able to find meaning.
Yeah,
that's
why I identify with
the lives of strangers.
Sorry, Greg.
He reminds me a lot of Ron Carlson, who had this amazing ability to reinvent himself again and again and again. And no two poems are exactly alike, but both poems share a kind of style and a kind of whimsy, and a kind of obvious depressing stoicism.
I think
I don't
artists
know.
have to evolve, with
Yeah.
time, and not with the times, but like in time, they have to involve their style and interest and like what they write about, how they write. Musicians are the same way. I always think of Outkast when I think of stuff like when I think of like the evolution, because album to album they're like so different and it gets kind of
Definitely.
weird all
Yeah.
the way up until the flute shit.
Yeah, it's got a flute.
Yeah.
That's currently that Andre 3000 is currently doing, but I mean, it makes perfect sense. So why not? But yeah, like that's his versatility. Like I identify so much with that. Like
Yeah.
I want to, because it's like it's kind of boring writing the same thing the same way all the time. Because you're not always going to be writing about that thing, that most important thing. You know what I mean? Like that story of the dead roommate was a poem that I held on to for a long time. I didn't want to write because I wasn't really ready. But I can't really touch that anymore. My brother, on the other hand, I have so many different experiences with him. I can write about him in a lot of different ways, and I can evolve my style along with like what I want to talk about in whatever moment that I'm writing a poem about him, or whatever else that has a little bit more, subject wise. Obviously, can kind of the beautiful thing about subjects are that like as you get older, you get more perspective on them, and um, so maybe there will be another roommate. But who knows? Who the fuck knows? Probably not. But anyway, like the thing that makes it kind of interesting is writing poems as organically as possible and like what you're interested in. Like, so if you're like reading a lot of a specific author, you might want to try them out, a little bit, like how they approach poetry. If you recognize like a pattern or a thing that's cool about it.
I had a question of both of you. Do you feel like because of his versatility that and his ability to get really dark in a sense, for lack of a better word, do you think like in his more of like his surface level poems or more like I guess happier poems, like do you feel like there's like it's suffused with some melancholy still, like at the heart of them, even though he's talking about something lighter, a little more scene driven? Do you think this? Are you look at, as because you're familiar with
Yeah.
them? Are you looking for like that? They're this like almost darker or melancholy center, or that you just accepted this to be? Oh, this is a different kind of poem. So you don't even think that.
So
What do you think, Craig?
what is the question? The question is,
Like I don't know. Like, do you go into it because you know where his range, and you realize that he can get extremely dark and deep and reflective, like in hard country. But when you read a different kind of poem from him, do you like go in? Do you see it like in a blank slate, or do you kind of think that he puts like? Do you look for like those darker elements in these happier poems? I guess. Um,
um,
Like
I don't look for
I
happiness or darkness. I look to be moved. Like
yeah.
that's
if
what
I
it comes down
grab,
to.
I look to be moved and entertained. But if I grab a Joe Bolton book of poems, and I only have one, um, I know what I'm looking for is. I'm also looking for like that energy and zeal that I had when I first started reading him, and when I was a little bit younger than him. Because it reminds me, like the great other mystery about life is, or about writing and reading is like these authors. Um, as you're reading them and you're being captivated by
Mm,
their words, you're also remembering, or at least I do. I remember when I first read them, and I remember things about the people who were around me when I first started reading them and talking about them. And
mm,
so it also it brings me back to my life. And um, I also felt a lot
yeah.
like Joe Bolton, or a lot like how I imagined Joe Bolton felt, where I was very alone. I was very lonely. I
Yeah.
thought that nobody there's like this goth element to him, not that Joe Bolton would ever identify, but he's like this angsty goth, like
Yeah.
fucking
he's
alone in the world, and
I
nobody
guess
fucking
maybe
loves me, and
He's
nobody
got that like
fucking
early
did-
poet, like
Yeah.
gothness to like
Yeah,
emo
yeah.
is what it is, Craig. It's
Yeah,
emo,
yeah,
not
yeah.
goth.
I guess I guess mainly I was thinking like when you open up a Joe Bolton poem or anthology or something, do you get a feeling, an overall feeling like, okay, this is what I'm gonna be diving into? Like does he have like a I guess a vibe to him?
Yeah,
Yes.
nostalgia and
There's
like
definitely a
sorrow for
Yeah,
me.
yeah. Like like it doesn't matter like what subject
And
matter he goes
distance.
down, there's gonna be a vibe that you're gonna be tapping into.
And it's also like there's something Craig described that is like an unfair advantage he has with us, Craig and I specifically, is that like our nostalgia he taps into too, because of where we were in our journey as like becoming writers when we found him, and it was just like the perfect moment.
Yeah.
I think he's like the kind of poet you give to a early poet, because like he's what you're about to get to, like, and it's exciting, like, and it's really fucking good. And at times it's like the best possible thing you could write, like Hard Country to me is like up there with all my other favorite poems that I think are like not just my favorites, but like great poems like Persimmons, Simple Truth, Have You Prayed, Poems of the Reader. I don't know if they reached that, like, we could put them on a pantheon of great poems, and sure, the poet who's like lived a whole life, and has written 20 times as many poems there's gonna be something a little bit, there's gonna be more to it.
There's gonna be a
just
just qua that you can only get
Yeah.
to by doing the thing a trillion times.
But at the heart of what makes a poem great, it's there,
Yeah.
and there's no missteps like in Hard Country for me. That that I think anybody can render. Anybody could do it with enough. I think you have to live. It's not only about like practicing and becoming a great writer or becoming great at writing your type of poem, but it's also just like living that life, living the life of a writer, of a poet or something. And that's the hardest part, because like we all know, like you get into relationships that derail you, go down, you get a job that derails you, you start a life, and yeah. You have a kid. I was trying not to say that one too much.
I was like, what? When you guys talk about him, it's almost like I guess in the literary scene, you always get, there's always like these stories, these like this prison writer who's they say he's the next Hemingway, and they have this like marketing campaign built on this anomaly of a writer comes out of nowhere, and they're like, oh my god, he's like at this level. But I feel like Bolton. He was that in the poetry world. Like he's just a guy that just came out and did his thing, and even though he's the most generic route to get into poetry, he's doing a great job at that level. Like he's just killing that level, and you don't know, like almost like it's very attractive to think like someone gets into poetry and it starts writing like him. It's like I think like every writer wants to do that. Like you said, like you want to get to that if you're somehow like engrossed in the whole idea of like being a poet, like you would want to sound like him at first.
Right.
But even in that lane, though, he really kills that lane. Even though it's a lane that I feel like every poet will go through, and then go through something else.
Yeah.
Like what happened if he stayed alive? He would have it's like Jimi Hendrix. He would have went to jazz. He would have did some other kind of music.
Or he would have fell off. We wouldn't care as much about him. And you asked last time we talked about him, is he like a gateway? That's why he's a gateway, because it's like you look at some of these poems and you're like, oh, I could probably get there. I could do that. That's how I felt about Sharon Olds, even though like that's crazy to think about. Or even Lee Young Lee, like some of the feelings he made me feel is like the same feelings I felt when I was writing, but never was able to like write like that. Like. So those are the poems.
It's almost like that. I feel like when I was getting into music, like you have these guys on stage, these bigger bands, like huge bands in coliseums, and they almost look like these mythical characters, like Led Zeppelin or whatever. Then you get into punk rock, and you see these people. There's no stage, and they're just doing it, and you're like, wow, like it's like he looks like me, and he's not. I mean, there's no like entourage. Like this is a guy he drove here, and it's like, and it's this crazy show, and he's just doing it, and like, oh wow, I could do that too. It's nothing. There's no middleman. And I feel like that's what his style is appealing to to most. Because it's not I don't want to say it's pedestrian, but it's just like it's a way to get into poetry and go, damn, this is.
I mean, the language, that's a good way to describe. I mean, he's doing a lot with language. Don't get me wrong, but like at its heart, it's very plain.
Yeah,
like said, and that's probably why Craig's bringing up Hemingway, because that's why Hemingway was so like cool, because he's so straightforward and like kind of plain in his language, but like the feeling he can invoke at the end of The Old Man in the Sea, you know, it's just like fucking crazy, like that he could do that, you know, just with character and scene, and like, and he does write beautifully too. Like there's no doubt about it. Anybody can. Everybody thinks they can write like Hemingway until they go down and try to write like Hemingway. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like actually, it's kind of hard.
But that's the beauty. That's that instant instance where that person goes, "Oh, I could do that." Like, let them think that it's okay. They could fail at it, but that's the fact that they know they could try. Oh, they could read a Bolton poem and go, "Oh, I could do this." That's a good moment to have. You don't want to read. I don't want to read freaking Thomas Mann and go, "Oh, I don't want to pick up. I don't want to like. I'm gonna tap into this. So dense."
This is interesting to think about, because like when you go to grad school, you start getting these really like obscure and like kind of like hard to read things. And I think the reason why those are so popular is because the person who like loves that shit is like, yeah, I could do that too, you know, like I could write like that. I kind of get it if I like got into it, you know. It never appealed to me, but like I could see how that could be like appealing to somebody else. I'm trying to think, like, I don't know, poets I don't love. I don't want to talk about it, but I mean, poets that I kind of like. I mean, Ray Armantrout. I think like she tricks you into thinking like her writing's really simple, and then it like is very, very abstract and weird. I can see the appeal for a certain type of person, why they think that they would read that and like want to go write. You know, not me, but Greg, what's going on over there?
I'm just talking to Leo. I gotta deal with something.
Me. Did Ben say me?
What do you do? Me. What are you drinking over there, John?
I got I've had a Guinness.
Really?
Yeah.
And this ESB.
Wow.
Resident
Butter.
Culture. It's kind of some cool art on there, I guess.
Yeah. No, it seems like you probably have access to a lot of cool breweries.
Dude, it's a problem.
It's
I got a Whole Foods, and like all the local beer is like it all like just funnels into Whole Foods. It's a fucking Whole Foods. Even like Publix has like great, awesome beer here. I mean, it's kind of like that in Florida, but the breweries are just so crazy good here.
Yeah, I can see that.
And there's like so many good breweries in Asheville, specifically like where we live. So this brewery is Charlotte. We've been there actually. They're really good too. But
right on. So how we doing, Craig? Are we gonna be?
We're doing great. You guys want to do the last one?
Yeah. I want to make sure you're good on time.
I'm great on time, dude.
Okay.
So Paige.
Age.
That was the last one, right?
The last one he wrote, or the last one we're talking about?
Last one we're talking about.
Or both. It's both.
Yeah.
Guys,
give me 2 minutes. Be right back.
All right, I'll go take a leak.
I'm alone. I'm alone.
Dan, just read the poem.
Okay.
That'd be funny if you just read the poem. Do you want to do it? You don't have to do that. I'll be right back.
No, that's right. I want to read it again.
Cool.
I haven't read it since last week. Let me. Yeah, I could find that. Oh,
Right. Somebody's dying on the screen, so.
Hey,
What's up?
let me grab the beer.
You're grabbing a beer?
Yeah, I grabbed one.
Hell yeah. We gotta go for another 2 hours in this motherfucker.
Hell yeah. You guys better buckle up, man.
Craig's like, actually, we're gonna talk about the whole last all 200 and how many pages is this? Is it really only 200 pages, Craig? Can you believe that? This poem page appears on page 200.
I believe it.
So I wonder how intentional that was. I guess I'll. All right, yeah. All right. Well, what do you got there, Dan? Oh, I can't hear you. Yeah, I think you're muted still.
Can you hear Dan?
You can hear him?
I can't hear him.
No, I can't hear him either. Okay.
okay. All right. Here you go. You hear me now, right? What the?
There you go.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
I can hear you now.
Oh, good. So no, I'm celebrating Cinco de Mayo a little early. La cerveza, la Pacifico.
Nice.
Yeah, that's
Lager.
Mexican piss.
Mexican piss.
Love it. Okay, I keep this place in business. Great sales on Mexican beer this week.
I might have to get some Mexican lagers, man.
Yeah. Greg, gotta go make some Mexican food.
Especially that baby's born on Cinco de Mayo.
Oh my god, that'd be great.
That'd be cool.
You gotta definitely give him a Spanish name. Her.
Just name her after Laura. I think Laura's a good Spanish name, right?
It is. Yeah.
It'll have to be Lauda.
Laura. I love. Or how do you say it, Laura? Just Laura. Laura's best friend, who killed herself, was born on Cinco de Mayo. Like, so Laura's like kind of hoping it's, Cinco de Mayo. So we'll see.
That'd be crazy. Very
Wouldn't that
fitting.
be crazy? And it was recent. It was like a year ago.
A year ago, yeah.
Wow. That's telling.
Weird, man. I told like yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get into the name stuff, dude. We're still kind of figuring it out. But
got a name in mind though, huh?
we got a few names in mind. Yeah, we'll see. It's tough.
Like,
I mean, how did you do it, Dan? It doesn't matter, right?
I did it with how I named my cats. I was just,
Yes.
no, it was like I was like uttering a sound. It was just I was like lam lambu. I was speaking in tongues, I guess, or something along. I was like C something like D Ramon, like CC, and she and then my Nancy was like, CC is short for Cecilia. I'm like, that's it, Cecilia. Boom.
Yeah, it's more about a sound, right? Like the way it sounds.
Yeah, I was
telling Laura.
I wanted to get something. I wanted something old fashioned. I was like CC or C DD CC or I was thinking like old Italian woman or something. And then it's just Cecilia, and I was like,
it's awesome.
Lock and key.
It's awesome.
You call her Cece though.
I don't. No, I don't call her Cece. I actually get mad. I like her as Cecilia. I thought that was such a boss name. I don't hear it anymore. I don't want to because people they want to name their kids like horses, man. I don't. It sounds so equestrian.
Like the other thing is like thinking about because Laura and I have a few like ghosts, like like dead people that we really love, and like we got a couple Sarahs, we got Shane, which could work, for a girl.
Yeah.
And we got Mary, which is her friend, but I just don't like Mary. It's not going to be Mary.
You don't like her, the name.
I don't know how to answer that. She was fine. She was a little weird though, the name really is. It's just like kind of biblical. It's too biblical, I don't know. It's too much.
Yeah.
Too heavy that way, and it's heavy. And like so like the thinking with those names, it's like I don't know, man. Like you want to really curse this kid with the name of like a tragedy, like from the get go.
Yeah,
it's something like
I always feel something like a sound. Like you need to whatever sound you feel. It's like I guess like it's like writing. You just want to get the utterance of a tone or a feeling, and if that can be audible, and then try to match that with a real name, or make it up yourself. I like Shane. That's cool.
Yeah, Shane is the one that we thought of. Like we decided on like years and years ago. Like if we have a girl, like we're like if it's a girl, fuck it, it's going to be Shane. If it's a boy, it's going to be Shane, of course. But even if it's a girl, fuck it, that'd be awesome. So that's what's going to happen. That's what I'm telling you. It's going to happen, but it's also like I don't know. That's my brother, man. Like I don't know. It's gonna be.
Oh, that's your brother's name?
Yeah, that's my brother's name.
Oh wow, yeah. So
it's heavy. It's fuck.
Yeah, it's heavy. That is heavy. Yeah, I mean, you could always put things together. No rules. People think they think there's rules to that naming business, but there's no rules.
No. So maybe this weekend we'll see. Anyway, Craig, do you have you sound like you had some thoughts to start off or?
Yeah, so I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this poem. In some ways, it reads more like a suicide note, almost like an epilogue to the book, which I think was its function. And it's, I mean, if this was just some random poem, I would like it, But it's Joe Bolton. So it goes, here is the page, half darkness, half silence. Hoping to find, at last, the way to you I could not find. It contains all my boredom, sickness, and desire. Those things I said in drunkenness and rage or love. Like water it holds its drowned, who are without names. Like time, it is just a way of passing the time. It lied now and then, and I confess, for your pleasure, some misguided aim of overcompensation for what was not only enough, but too much. Reliance upon language was its undoing. But someday, it will be all that is left of me. death bothers its margins like gulls along some shore.
I don't know if there's an issue with this copy I have, but that second to last stanza is not on the I have the book in front of me and it's there, but obviously, hang on a second.
Is it in the version I sent?
I have mine has the name at the bottom and like the date.
Right.
No, that was at March 20th, 1990.
Yep.
That's the end of the poem, like there. He puts the date.
End of the book.
End of the book. Oh, okay. It is like a suicide note.
Yeah, I think so. And
the part that's not in it is for what was not only enough but too much reliance upon language was its undoing. I'm just worried Dan doesn't have that one with that line, those two lines in it.
Say what lines was that again?
It's like it's right before the last couplet. It would say, for what was not only enough but too much reliance upon language was its undoing.
No, I don't have that part.
Damn it! I must have skipped it or something when I was writing it. Listen, my apologies, Dan.
You got
get your shit together. Get your shit together. Get your shit. Put it together.
You shouldn't be eating hoagies when you're transcribing this stuff.
Listen, I usually got somebody like chirping in my ear at work.
me.
In essence, it's Dan's fault. But hey, you did put the ellipses in, Craig. It's just at the end of the wrong sentence. And you got it's a weird ellipses. It has 4 periods. And you got that. That's right. That's perfect. But it's at the end of the wrong stanza.
Sorry. You gotta stop being interesting, Craig. If you're boring,
yeah, Craig, what the fuck?
Sorry about that, guys.
No, it's fine. It's all right. No, does it, Craig? Does it bother you because you feel like it's too melodramatic if it was a suicide note, or if it reads that way?
So one of my problems with poetry is when
let's talk about it.
The writer doesn't ever commit to a scene, and really doesn't commit to an image either. You know, like the image is the page itself. That's what it's talking about. And you get kind of an image at the end. Death bothers its margins, like gulls along some shore, which is cool. But no matter how lofty or beautiful or transcendent or interesting the language is, if it doesn't have an image, or in my case, a scene, which is just a series of images all relating to one moment in time, then it's hard for me to like be moved by it. So I'm moved like intellectually by, okay, this is probably one of the last things this guy ever wrote. But
this isn't a poem to take in isolation. For me, when I first read it, I knew the story, his story and everything, and that so that could make up I think that makes up for, it's. I don't want to give it too much credit because I do agree with what you're saying. Of course, like that's how I think of poetry too. But like it's impossible for me to not think about him in that moment, right before he kills himself. That's giving the poem a lot of credit, of course, because that could be anything. It could be anywhere. And what I'm thinking of is not what you're thinking of. And but what's up, Dan?
I'm sorry, John. I didn't know are you saying that you wish you didn't know that he killed himself? Like, if you read this poem first before you knowing that information, did knowing that information influence the way you comprehended this poem?
I don't think you get to this poem without knowing that. Like, it's the last poem in the book. You probably got the book because you kind of knew the story a little bit anyway.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think I could read it. I don't think there's a situation where I could. I guess there is. I mean, I guess it's possible. It's probably on the internet or something. Just stumble upon a poem, and yeah, you'd be like, okay, it's a little I don't know. I guess you said it melodramatic. Maybe yeah. I do think the lines are pretty good. I mean, the lines are good. Obviously, I think it would be better. Here's the thing: like, how could he write this poem with a scene? There's just no way. It is a suicide note. You know, it'd be like, all right, my last act is gonna be to write some like it would have to be like, I don't know, man. That's a risky thing to do. Like if you wrote your last thing. I don't know if that's risky. I mean, it's one and done. Boom, you're done. You know,
maybe it's lack of risk.
It's just it's the opposite, right? It's like fucking. So I think what he wrote was just like. It reminds me of like poems that I would write really drunk.
Yeah,
where they were not scene based, they weren't image based. It was just like I have a rhythm of thought going through my head, you know, and I like put it down and it feels right. It feels like poetry. And this does have that feeling of like rhythm and poetry for sure. But it doesn't have like, it's not very artful, I think is the thing. Like it doesn't have like the last line is of course an image. So he does stick the landing, of course. But yeah, it's very much a kind of a drunken poem is how I would like think of it. And I would think of it like that if, you know, the implication wasn't that it was his last thing he wrote. And I don't think he would put a lot of thought into it either. I think it was just kind of, you know, maybe he did put a lot of thought into it. I don't know. I feel it comes off as a way of passing
time. Maybe that's why they put it in the last. It's the last one.
Yeah.
There's a reason why it's last.
What? There's two of them on the shelf. I'll get it for you.
It's kind of a lament. It's also like what's cool about it is like it's kind of a lament for his life. Like it kind of says, "Hey, I tried. You know, I feel like he always had this. Whatever his tendency was, he probably always had it with him. And maybe he used writing as a way to like give his meaning life or give his life meaning rather, and like to do something, you know, with his life. But at the end of the day, this poem like laments that it wasn't enough, and you know,
neither is poetry.
Yeah,
maybe that's the point. Is nothing's ever enough. Not that.
End of podcast. Nothing's ever enough. All right, guys. Good night.
I mean, it feels true. It feels like part of being alive is always wanting more, always being in a state of wanting more. You guys ever played The Sims?
Oh yeah.
Is that Sim City?
No, Sims is where you're like controlling a person.
Yeah.
And like so trying to make sure they pee and poop and go to bed. And get a job.
All you're doing is managing this person's needs and wants.
Fuck, I can't even
all the time.
Right. I played it when I was like 10. It felt fun for a 10-year-old.
It would die. It would kill it.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
A lot of people do.
Like sometimes you like work if like because obviously if you work a lot you get money and you can like build. You cool thing about it is you build your house and you get to buy stuff, you know.
Yep.
And so you could like work your character to death and you're like, oh, I can finally get the best microwave, and the guy just like keels over and dies next to his brand new microwave.
Yeah. But that's life though. Like you realize that's just us from a different perspective.
God, that sounds like that's like industrial revolution shit right there. Like,
but it's like under the guise of this like cute like music, like ding 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 ding, and like they talk all cute like wobba dubba dubba doo rubba dubba dubba doo. You know, like it's all cute and shit.
They talk a made up language.
Yeah.
So that you never forget that they're just fodder. They never really become human, I guess, is the reason for it. But I only bring it up because part of the challenge of that game is you're always in combat with the character's wants and desires and needs, right? The need to sleep, the need to eat, the need to shit, the need to be comfortable, the need for their environment's aesthetic to be met, their need for sociability and being social. They have social needs. They have to talk to people occasionally, otherwise they'll go crazy and they'll start hallucinating. Just that person's problem, more than likely, that we were talking about before this podcast started, is social needs aren't being met, and the way that he's going about them is not working. But it's also the problem with Joe Bolton, actually, throughout this book of poems. It's definitely a profound need for sociability, which is actually captured here. I mean, he's talking directly to you, the reader.
Yeah.
And he's like, we never got the met. I could never find my way to you, unfortunately. And it's just what it makes. So the reason I think it works in a way is it makes me think about how popular he must have been in his MFAs, or how unpopular. He'd gone to 2 different programs. And you would think that somebody who could write like this, everybody would just fawn over.
Be a rock star.
You think he'd be a rock star, but I don't really think he was.
Probably wasn't. It's probably like, it's probably like most of us who go through grad school. I think it is the majority of people who go through grad school, whether they can write or not, or whether they're great or not. Like, they're kind of outcasts for one reason or another. And he obviously could write like a motherfucker, but I doubt Joe Bolton was I doubt Joe Bolton was going to grad school to like network and
those are the people who are social butterflies, is the networkers and the social climbers and the people that are looking to get published, and the people that are winning awards, for teaching, best first semester award, and are applying for scholarships, and they're getting real cozy with their professors and negotiating favors and shit like that. Like, I don't think Joe was that guy. I think Joe, was somebody, he probably had a little niche following of people that recognized his talents and recognized that he would be popular at some point. But it also is a statement about grad school, and just how fucking lonely it is, man, and how lonely life is. I think of him at like these open mics, and I don't know, I feel sorry for anybody who's trying to be a poet, in this modern age, competing, with cell phones and with shit on the news. Like, you have to go to fucking bars and go to these shitty open mics and sit, like, even if your stuff is great and even if people respond to it, you have to sit through a litany of people playing the ukulele and shit.
Correct.
And which
Dude,
is
do you
why,
remember that one time we were at the coffee shop? I think with Braylick and Greenspan, and I was wearing like this fucking too small button-up T-shirt and these like shorts that barely covered my thighs. And I read the Dear Reader poems, and I like fucking was in it, dude. And it was the only time I went to an open mic where like even the guy making the coffee was just like, the coffee machine was one.
I do remember him stopping.
And I just saw his eyes looking at me when I was reading that poem. And everybody else was fucking quiet as hell. Oh, it was a beautiful moment. And on the other hand of that, we would go to a coffee district, and like there'd be some assholes just having a fucking loud conversation in the back, and you start yelling at them like, "Listen to me!"
that was all pre-grad school though. Like, that time is all like really happy in my memories. Like,
well, that's what it's all about, That's what it's all about.
the programs now.
Answer me.
I mean, I don't know. We shit on
go
him enough, but to me, that it works for that level because I relate to him on that. But I don't. It just once again just makes me want to go on a big tirade against suicide and against people like succumbing to the loneliness and succumbing to the pain of existence. I think that if he'd have tore this poem up and not done it and went on to write 10 more books, he'd be the youngest great poet alive today. Like right now, in my views, besides you guys that I know, you and Leo and Laura and Jen, the best poets in this country are like hitting 80. Sharon Olds is up there, Yusuf Kamanyaka's up there, Leah Lee's up there, Campbell McGrath is up there, Philip Levine just passed a couple of years ago. It's like, dude, it's a dying art, man. And
died like 8 years ago, dude. It's been a long, isn't that crazy to think about?
Yeah. It's fucking crazy that was still like fucking 2017. Like 2017 to 8 years ago? Fuck. But yeah, I don't know. I really don't have a whole lot to say about it. I wish that, my wish is that he torn this up and gone back to talking about his childhood again and gone back to talking about his dad. Here's the thing I don't buy. I don't buy the thesis that all of your stories have been told, and even if they have been, I also don't buy the unstated thesis that you're not going to live more stories along the way. You know what I mean? Every day is a fucking story. This guy that me and Dan were talking about before this podcast started, that's a story. John, who's on the edge of being a father, that's a fucking story.
Yeah, but the other side of that is, especially for someone like Joe Bolton, who did kill themselves, is thinking, I had my whole childhood, and, I lost who I loved. I'll have to go through it again and again and again just to write a fucking poem about it. Fuck it, fuck this shit. I'm done. I'm done with this. And either I keep writing and I keep after a certain point, you get into this and you're living the right and not the other way around how it should be. You're not just especially somebody deep, when you're deep into it, that's kind of how you think. Every experience is just new fodder, right? That's not how you want to think about your daughter. That's not how. What do you think? Want to think about your mom when she's dying?
The priorities are misplaced in that instance. You live to live, and you write because some part of you isn't fulfilled unless you write about it. But you don't live to write. It's not. Nothing should feel like fodder. Everything should feel new, and everything should feel surprising. And you should only pick up a pen when there is no question of whether you're going to pick it up or not. When you have to, when something's speaking through you that forces you to the page, to write something genuine. But I don't know.
I do think a lot of people when they go through MFA have this weird industrialization of writing. I gotta fucking put my hard hat on and write this poem about my dead brother today. It's maybe you shouldn't write that poem, buddy. Maybe you should just fucking take a break. Go for a walk, maybe. Go look at the sunset, you idiot.
It's not a block of granite that you're going to carve something out of. It's even great sculptors, I feel the same way. They use their whole body for their art, but when it comes out the way it's supposed to, it's something was speaking through them, some desire, some human desire to be understood. It wasn't their conscious mind. I am going to create something today. That's what Nabokov thought. He thought it was like, I am going to force these characters to do what I tell them to do because I'm a slave driver and my characters do what I say. And it's like, dude, you wrote one great book and everything else was shit. All right. And that's
Well, he wrote fucking Lolita so he can say whatever the fuck he wants.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what he did. But also, like, it's intoxicating because to think that you could do that, you had that power, because that's how it feels. Like when everything's working, this is for all art. Because at the end of the day, you're just putting you're putting Lego pieces together, right? But you're doing it in a really beautiful and like a way that nobody's really thought of before. And so there's magic to that, like that the creativity of it. But at its basis, especially like stuff like that's more kinetic, like drawing with charcoal, or I'm guessing like sculpting is probably that way, and painting too. Like a lot of the stuff we're using media to make stuff. It probably could feel like over robotic. Like, oh, I could just fucking show up to work and make this great piece of art. But yeah, and they did. Like, and all great artists do that too. But the ones that they're truly remembered for are the ones that have that like extra thing, whether it be like it's extra special because of what it means to them, what it meant to society at the time, all these uncontrollable things that go into it too. So on the other hand, yeah, you kind of need to show up to your job and do the work.
I don't doubt
skill too.
I don't doubt that feeling happens and that it's important. I just think that really what it is just this tremendous babies, because the blanket's so wet.
Dude, it's fucking soaked.
Take it.
From me, because I peed in it. That was so good. Wow, I was sleeping.
I washed it twice. I can't believe that. Tried it twice.
Shove a bunch of other shit in there and the door could barely close.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, okay. That's why it's wet.
I got it, baby. I'll try it again.
Good night
I
now.
love you.
We better get Craig off this podcast before Leo cuts his fucking head off.
I love it.
Anyways, I don't doubt that those feelings happen and that they might be useful, especially because you do need ego to create something. Like, you just do. You need to feel like you're the man and that everything that you say is brilliant and that you have brilliant things to say and that you have this unique way of looking at the world and that your stories are valuable and that they're moving. You need to feel that way. But I also feel like ultimately something else is speaking through you. Whether you call it the muse or the subconscious, or you tap into this ancient reptilian part of your brain that can fill in the gaps of memory or whatever, or make memories occur, as vibrantly as if you're living through them again, or make memories that never even happened occur, so you live through those, whatever. And to think that you control that ultimately is a little silly to me. I call it talent if you want, or call it the mystery of art. But to me, this is Joe Bolton finally speaking to us, and not the thing that lived in his brain that saw the world in this really unique way. And it's still definitely an intelligent voice and an interesting voice, but I disagree with the premise, and that not. I kind of disagree. Maybe that's why I subconsciously tore off the second to last line. Reliance upon language was its undoing, for what was not only enough, but also too much. Like, I don't think language was its undoing. I think your mastery of language was its doing, fool. Like this connection between us exists because of language. And, I don't know. Like, the other irony is whatever lofty ambitions those other poets have, and however successful or unsuccessful they all were in his program and in all the MFAs all across the planets, every poet's worth a shit wishes that they could write the way that Joe Bolton wrote, and he fucking threw it away, and it just pisses me off on that end.
Yeah.
It's like, dude,
yeah,
threw it away because it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to make him happy, and it's like the other thing is
maybe at the end of the day he was still like swallowing his fucking mental health with writing, like like whatever the thing was that was fucking him up, he never really addressed. It sucks.
This can't be like, once again, this can't be what you're alive for. It can't be that. Even if you're Joe Bolton and you're brilliant at it and you're the best. Hemingway went the same way, by the way, so it's interesting that we bring up him, but so many authors do. Faulkner, Fitzgerald.
You tapped into it. You tapped into that, like a couple podcasts ago. You take that element away, the expiration date that maybe we don't know about. You get, it affects the art too. Maybe these people knew they were going to kill themselves, and that's what it's like. That was like momentum in a sense. Like if he had like someone who was a little more like had some foresight and was maybe had their mental health was in a better spot, maybe you wouldn't get the same art. So I don't know. It's like one of those things.
Yeah, it's kind of the case with Joe Bolton, like we talked about. I think the last time we talked about that a little bit, and it would be interesting to see what he would be if he didn't have that, like in the back of his head, gnawing at him, like that knowledge that he was going to do that, because it does feel like that. I mean, look at Hard Country. I don't know the timeline. I'm guessing that first section of the book is more later into his career, but still like a few years off of this poem. But yeah, it's definitely there, man. It's definitely there. And then I think it adds to his, what Craig's talking about, the ego. Like the ego comes out the most in this group with Party, I think. Because who sits and thinks what I write about what's happening in my neighborhood or out my window matters. I could do it, because I could render it well, and I'm a good writer and all that. It's kind of I feel that a little bit when I read it nowadays. So yeah, maybe you don't get that poem. And that poem's still good despite it, So yeah, it's fucking interesting. It sucks. It kind of sucks. Either way, it's like, yeah, I want you to live. I want to see what you're writing now. I think now you'd be, like Craig says, like one of the best. But maybe there really wasn't any more gas left in the tank. Maybe this is it. Or maybe this is just all it was going to be, and we're lucky to even have these poems.
Yeah.
There's a million people every day that kill themselves without fucking putting out a book of poems or a book of anything or any sort of art or value. Except for the love from their family, which is like, if that's all you have, fuck, dude, and you still kill yourself. Like, how, you must be so tortured. This is how this should end, by the way. Like, it should end on this note, because this poem is fucking... it's pretty dark.
Well,
I like that's a good way to go. And hopefully, next time we talk, you'll be another member of your family.
There will be, I think so. Unless we're talking on Tuesday or something. I think it's gonna happen.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So
I didn't. We're not ending on a sour note.
Yeah, you're right. This is a weird podcast though, because this is gonna be like a what's it called? Like
part 2 sequel.
No. It's gonna be like when people bury a box of mementos and stuff and time capsule.
Oh yeah,
that's what it's gonna be. for me to listen to one day, like the day before maybe, May 3rd, 2024. I put the date in it for whoever's listening to this.
Great. So like it's gonna have like it has some emotional significance. Me talking about Pacifico.
Yeah.
and killing beers. Yeah, that's what you want to look at.
Exactly.
Think about that.
Yeah, it's fine.
What happened to that guy?
I know. I'm gonna be like sober, looking back.
Yeah.
What the fuck are you doing, you idiot?
Hanging with these losers.
No, I'd never think that. We're the winners, man. The losers are the ones that don't live their life. You know, they go through their whole life so careful they don't
That's what I'm saying.
A mistake.
More. See, I love this. We're really we just went from Bolton. See what we did.
We're up here now.
We're up here. We're already we're sky high right now.
Hell yeah.
Damn right. But anyways, I love you guys, man. Hey, been fun. Transcribing some other stuff, John.
Cool.
If you want to do some fiction, we'll play it by ear.
We should probably do some fiction.
Sounds good to me. We'll play it by ear when we
play it by ear. I think I have other things to worry about.
Yeah, we'll see, man. I might be on fucking Mars the next time you talk to me.
I'm sure you will be, buddy.
All right.
Anyways.
Well, good luck. Good luck. May this day live in infamy.
Freedom! The last few minutes of freedom. Just kidding. My kids listen to this, but all right.
It'll be a totally new kind of life, John, but you'll love it. All right.
Hell yeah.
Oh Lord.
Hell yeah.
That was from the catacomb.
Anyways, guys, I gotta walk this dog.
All right, buddy. All right, guys. Dan.
Hey.
Peace, man.
Peace. Much love.
Yeah, right, this is great. Later, dude.
Ah.